Well, let me say, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Revelation Today. Today, my name is John Bradshaw from It Is Written, and wherever you are from or whoever you are, I'm grateful that you're joining us today for a very exciting, very important, extraordinarily relevant presentation in the prophecies of the Bible at Revelation Today, The Mysteries Revealed. And there are some significant, I'll call them mysteries. I don't think it's wrong to do that. Subjects that have stretched our capacity to understand and have drawn us deep into the Bible. Today's is one of them. We study the United States in Bible prophecy. And don't think this is just a subject relevant to people who live in or are from the United States. It's a subject that is relevant to everybody all over the world, as you will see. The issues in the book of Revelation are global down here in the end of time. Here's how we're going to begin. We will begin with a poll question. And here's how I'd like you to contribute to today's poll. If you have the Revelation Today app, then that makes it really easy. You can also participate via Revelation Today, the website. The app is the very best thing you can do. If you're online, look for the link on Twitter and Facebook. That's Revelation Today Facebook, and It Is Written Facebook, and also on Twitter. So there. Now, if you don't have the app, you know what to do. Rush to your friendly neighborhood app store immediately and download it, and you'll be thankful that you did. Now, here's our poll question. Let's look at this poll question. It is, what is the strongest quality of the United States? Of these four, you might think it's something else, but of these four, what would you rate as the strongest quality of the United States of America? A, democracy. B, religious freedom. C, Judeo-Christian values. And D, free enterprise. Now, you may wonder, oh my, how do I plump for one over the other? But I want to encourage you to do that so that we can aggregate our responses today and present back to you, and not too long from now, a result from today's poll. So, what's the strongest quality of these United States? A, democracy. B, religious freedom. C, Judeo-Christian values. And then D, free enterprise. What do you think? Participate via the mechanisms I shared with you a moment ago. We make it nice and easy by presenting to you a bright, shiny Revelation Today app. That makes it really simple. Now, we'll pause on, well, I don't want you to pause, but we'll just put that, we'll let that bubble away in the background. We'll let that simmer. And then we'll go to today's questions, and I'm going to welcome my friend and trusted colleague, Pastor Yves Monnier, to come and ask our questions. While he is on his way, let me tell you how, in case you haven't figured it out, you can submit a video question on the Revelation Today app, and I have the app right here. When you open up the app, you'll find there's a list of things you can do. One of them says interactive responses. It's just that easy. Click there, and you'll find $20 be emailed to you right away.
No.
And the I thought you were sending the money. Okay, well, at least part of what I'm telling you is true. Right there, that's where, when it goes to interactive responses, evidently, what I'm learning is we didn't add the $20 feature. I'm so sorry. But where it says interactive responses, click there or press there, tap there, and then it'll bring up where you can submit a video question just nice and easy. We welcome you to do that at any time. Okay, Yves, thanks for that.
All right, thank you. And good morning, everyone. First question here. John, when we get to heaven, will we have wings?
I told you sometimes the answers to the questions would be nice and short. This is one of them. I don't know. I have no idea. I guess if we need them, we'll have them. And if we don't, we won't. We'll find out.
Robert has been waiting and waiting and waiting for his question, and he's already on screen here. And so let's turn to the video right now.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Pastor John. This is Robert, and my question is, when we're talking about the rising of the dead. What happens if you're already cremated? And if you're cremated, will that mean that you still go to heaven?
Terrific question. And the answer is a nice and easy answer. In the resurrection, the Bible says the dead in Christ rise. God gives everyone at the resurrection a new body. In fact, even the living receive a new body. God is not dependent on what was to form what will be. Now, that's good news. The Lord is going to give everybody a brand new body, and whether you've been buried or cremated, in fact, think about it this way. If you were buried, or if someone was buried long ago, and then somebody was created recently, they essentially turn into exactly the same form, really, don't they? So no problem to God. Jesus is a creator and a recreator. Cremated folks can go to heaven. Thank the Lord for that. Think about all of the martyrs down through the ages, many of whom were burned at the stake. No, God knows He is able to remake us, and He'll remake us perfectly, and it's going to be wonderful. Thanks for your question, Robert.
This question is from Aaron, and it's probably a question that many have because it's come up on several occasions.
Okay.
If you learn about the Sabbath but continue to keep Sunday, will you jeopardize your salvation?
The challenge is, Aaron would not have asked this question if the question was, if you are a murderer and then you learn it's wrong to murder, would continuing to murder jeopardize your salvation? No one would ask the question, if you are an adulterer and you learn that adultery is wrong, but you continue to do that, would you jeopardize your salvation? No one would say, if you bow down and worship graven images and then you learn that's wrong, if you continue to do that, would that negatively impact your salvation? We know the answer to the question. Now, the question is, what is God's will and how do we respond to God's will? James wrote, therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to that person it is sin. And friend, we know that the wages of sin is death. The trouble is, murder is not a fashionable sin, and neither is adultery is kind of becoming less objectionable in the eyes of many, but that's not fashionable, and stealing is not fashionable, but breaking the Sabbath is like everybody does it, to the extent that we've lost sight of the fact that that could even be wrong. So instead of putting your finger to the wind to find out what's wrong, let's go to the Bible, and as we look at the It Is Written Bible that many of you are receiving here, we discover the Bible gives us a very clear delineation of the will of God. And what we want to do is bring our life into harmony with God's will. Now look, the tricky thing about this question is what we end up sounding like we're saying is that salvation hinges upon whether you do or don't do a certain thing. And that's not what salvation hinges on. Your salvation isn't dependent on Sabbath keeping or not murdering or not stealing or not coveting. Those are the fruits of salvation. Lost people come to Christ, they're dead lost. They come to Jesus, they're now saved, and then they begin to grow in the grace of God. And He grows them and grows them and grows them and prepares them for the second coming of Jesus Christ. So salvation comes as a result of you being saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. How you jeopardize your salvation is by turning your back on Christ and allowing yourself to be separated from God. That's what happens. Now, some people do that, of course, by getting tangled up in deeds or misdeeds that send them down the wrong path. So, here's the thing. Jesus said, if you love me, you'll do what? How many commandments did He have? There were 10. Does that include the Sabbath? Yes, and a whole lot of other things as well. Come to Jesus, be connected to Him. He is the basis and the ground of your salvation. And when you love Him and you learn His will, your response will be, I want to do that, not because this will save me, but because He has saved me, and I'm responding out of love to Him. There you go.
Our next question is from Barry, who has a question on video regarding this thing called forgiveness.
All right, Barry, let's go ahead.
Hi, John. I just wanted to ask if it was important for people to forgive before it is requested as per the Bible.
Let's understand something. Forgiveness helps you 100 times more than it helps the person that you forgive. So if you are thinking to yourself, well, I'm just not going to exercise forgiveness to that person until they come to me on bended knee begging for forgiveness, you're not hurting that person, you're hurting yourself. Yes, a Christian ought to be having a forgiving attitude to whoever crosses them at whatever time. And I know I make it sound kind of utopian. Here in the real world, we struggle with that, and forgiveness sometimes comes with some difficulty, and sometimes we work up to it, and sometimes we've got to grow in forgiveness. Understand that? Someone really hurts you, my goodness. But you know, not that long ago, there was a terrible, tragic mass shooting in a church in South Carolina. That shooter has never asked for forgiveness. I don't know if he ever will. But it was powerful when family members of the victims said, "We forgive that man for what he did." Unbelievable. Now, who do you think has helped most? They have been robbed and hurt and bereaved and had tragedy inflicted upon them. They've said, we're not carrying around hate, we're not carrying around a grudge, we're not carrying around unforgiveness, we're going to let that go. They're blessed by that. Of course, hopefully it'll touch the young man's heart. No, you don't have to wait until somebody asks. The appropriate thing to do is to forgive. Some people can't ask. They back into your car in the parking lot, dent your fender, and off they go. They didn't even know who you were. Some people have died. No, just forgive. Jesus said that by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, when you have love one for another. So this is demonstrated in forgiveness. Keep this in mind. Oh boy, forgiveness doesn't give somebody a free pass. Forgiveness isn't saying that terrible thing you did to me is actually okay. Forgiveness isn't saying I'm just forgetting about everything you did. There's no such thing as forgive and forget. Forgive and forget, it could in some certain circumstances be bad for you. What I mean is, if someone's really wronged you, how in the world do you forget? But you forgive. It's the right thing to do.
Marty has the following question. If you miscarry a child or have an abortion, will we see that child in heaven even if that child was only a few weeks old? Will that child even recognize his or her family even if he or she was never born?
Challenging questions, and they represent pain and anguish that have been experienced by many. This is a difficult world. The question is, I don't know. The answer is rather, I don't know, and I think it's fair to say neither do you. We don't know. Now, here's the thing. We have no reason to assume that little ones who have not sinned would be lost. There's no reason to assume that. But I don't think it's wise or accurate for us to go ahead and assume that they'll all be saved. God did not make us the Holy Spirit, so we don't know. But I believe that if you love God and you've lost a little one through some type of tragedy, you can look forward with confidence. There's no reason you cannot. There's none. But as for saying they're all going to be saved, let's let God decide. But remember that God is good. He's gracious. He is forgiving. He's looking forward to a well-populated heaven with all those who love Him and will love Him throughout eternity. Some of these are difficult things. We can assume some. We shouldn't assume too much. Let's allow God to have the final word on this one.
John, we have many viewers from overseas, and Denise from overseas has submitted this video question.
Thank you, Denise.
Hello everyone, my name is Denise Dixon and I'm from Kingston, Jamaica. My question regarding the judgment is, what's really going to happen on Judgment Day?
What's going to happen on Judgment Day? That's Denise from Jamaica.
From Jamaica.
All right. You know, the Bible refers to judgment in several different ways. There is a judgment before Jesus comes back. We know that. Revelation 22:11 talks about that. Daniel 8 talks about the cleansing of the sanctuary, and this was Judgment Day for Israel of old, Judgment Day for Israel down here in the end of time, God's spiritual Israel. So there is a judgment before Jesus returns, and that is when God looks through the books of record to see whether those who have claimed the name of Christ really are safe to save. It's an audit. That's all it is. Don't fear, don't fret. God's record keeping is meticulous, and He will audit the records. And when your name comes up, He's looking to see not what you did and didn't do. He knows that already. He's just looking for the benefit of the universe to see where you stand with Jesus. Are you truly saved? You called yourself a Christian, were you? And when it gets to the first person will be someone named Aaron Aardvark. First name on the list. I don't know. Actually, maybe it just starts with Adam. Maybe this is chronological. And it's not going to say, oh boy, here's his deeds and his misdeeds. It'll simply say saved or lost. Was he washed in the blood of the Lamb? Did he accept what Jesus did for him? So that's that judgment that takes place before Jesus returns. A bunch of saved people on the earth. And you know, Jesus said, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, haven't we done this and that and many other wonderful things? And Jesus says, I never knew you. So the judgment's going to separate the true believers from the untrue believers. So that's one aspect of judgment. And then there is a great white throne judgment in Revelation chapter 20 where the lost are gathered around the throne of God and they are enabled to see really the reason that they are lost. And then you might call the executive judgment when punishment is poured out or the final destruction of the wicked takes place. So Denise, I hope that sort of settles it for you somehow. I wish I could say this, but judgment really is separated out into 2 or 3 different parts. By the way, I'll preempt a question. Some have wondered why in the world God would raise the wicked just to destroy them. If they're already lost and dead in the ground, why didn't God just leave them there? You know something? Death penalty is a pretty severe thing, and I'm not speaking in behalf of it or against it. I'm simply using it as an illustration. When someone is sentenced to death in a courtroom and then that sentence is carried out and they go to that appointment protesting their innocence, that leaves you feeling a little bit unsettled. Now, when they go to their date with whoever it is and they say, I'm just so sorry I did it, I'm not saying that makes something harsh not harsh, but at least there's a sense of, okay, this is how justice looks, if I can say it that way. Before fire comes down from God out of heaven and destroys the wicked, the Bible says every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So what that means is at least the lost are going to say, God was right. I was wrong. God did nothing wrong in blotting me out. I'm getting what happens to those who disconnected themselves from the source of life. Judgment. Okay.
All right, here's Stella's question.
Yes.
Since Jesus is now a man, in other words, not omnipresent, when we get to heaven, will we have to stand in line or sign up to spend time with Jesus?
We have eternity. So there's going to be plenty of time for everyone to spend as much time as possible with Jesus. I don't mind if I have to stand in line. I'll gladly stand in line. I don't quite know how God's going to do it, but I know that He is, and He'll spend lots of time with all of us. Keep something in mind. You think you want to spend time with Jesus? He wants to spend time with you much more than you want to spend time with Him. He's looking forward to this more than even we are. That's really something.
Pastor Bradshaw, this is from Bonnie. In this glimpse of heaven, how are we to understand the meaning of the 5th seal of Revelation chapter 6, verses 9 through 14, where the souls of those who had been slain cry out, and they are told to rest a while longer until all their number would be killed as they were, and then the souls were given white robes, to wear.
Yep. Revelation 6, 9, souls under the altar. And they cried out, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth. Now, remember, we learned the other night that human beings do not possess a soul in the sense of when you die, your soul goes somewhere. We are the combination of body and breath. That makes a living soul. It's a very important distinction because if we have a soul that wanders off somewhere, now you may say, oh no, but what it does is it opens up the idea of communicating with the dead. It opens up the idea of spiritualism. God said that when we die, we sleep. That's all through the Bible. We sleep. What you are goes to sleep. It's like shutting down your computer when you're done in the evening. It's kind of all there, but it's not good for anything until you boot it back up again. So we sleep, and then in the resurrection, God boots us back up again. I kind of like that. Now, what about soul? No, we don't possess a soul. You are a soul. It's biblical. It's all through the Bible. The reason that we were taught otherwise is because of tradition, not because of the Bible. So here there are souls under the altar crying to be avenged. Yesterday, I had leaves all over my yard that were crying out to be raked up. I had to remind my son that the grass isn't crying out to be cut, but it's talking about it. It's having a discussion there that if you listen in, you can hear it. You may have left some dishes in the sink this morning, and when you get home, you can pretend they're not there, but they're going to cry out. Have you come and clean up those dishes? Here, this is figurative language. Injustice has been done. Now, we know that souls don't go to heaven and hide under the altar. This is figurative language. But those who have died for their faith in Christ, those deaths are crying out to be avenged. It's symbolic language. If it isn't, then, of course, you must have a scenario in which those who died, their souls, which we don't have, go to heaven and spend some time under the altar. Figurative language talking about how justice demands to be done, and justice will be done.
All right, John, another John, submitted this video question.
All right, thank you, John.
Hello, Pastor John.
Hey,
My
John.
name is John from Columbus, Georgia, and I had a question about our spirit. I know that I've heard from you that our spirit is the breath of life that gives us life, and we become a living soul. I've also heard it referred to as pneuma, but in the book of Hebrews, it talks about that the sword, the word is like a sword. It can pierce and divide asunder our soul and our spirit and our joints and marrow, which I believe is talking about our physical body with the joints and marrow. I wanted to know if there's another meaning to the word spirit besides the breath of God, the breath of life and pneuma, if it really is like a third part of our being, body, soul, and spirit. That's the way I was taught for many years, and I was just curious on what your spin is on that. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. That's a really good question, because somebody asked me in the foyer one night, well, aren't we a three-part person, body, soul, and what, spirit, or body, soul, and mind? Well, yes, that's true, but just be careful what definition you put on soul. We have a body, that's clear. We have an emotional or a mental aspect to our being, and also there is a spiritual aspect to us. Now, is that the soul? No. But that's that part of us that resonates with God, that we are enabled to communicate on a deeply spiritual level with God. It's not simply intellectual, but it's that spiritual aspect of us where by faith we reach out and connect with God on a spiritual level. So I would not deny that we are a threefold person. We are mental, physical, and spiritual. That's correct. But let's not confuse the spiritual for the soul. That's that spiritual aspect of our nature. So that's true. We are that threefold being. But we just got to be careful how we define the definitions or how we define each aspect of that. Body, mind, and spirit. No question about it. Not a separate entity, a vapor being, a ghost, not that, but that spiritual part of our nature via which we connect on a deep level with God.
And now our final question from Nita. Dear Pastor John, please talk about unanswered prayers. After many, many years of the same prayer, does this mean God is not blessing if he does not answer? Is it because of sin, or is there another reason why some prayers are not answered?
You know, this could be delicate. Unanswered prayer could be because of sin. Sure, it could. Yeah. Now, but I don't know your situation. If you love God and you have yielded your life to God, you are praying and you are a child of God, it's likely not because of sin, but it's true. The Bible says in Psalm 66 and verse 18 that if I regard iniquity in my heart, if I cling to sin, God will not hear me. Now that's clear, that's in the Bible. But I'd hate to say that every unanswered prayer is because there's sin in your life. It probably is not. Sometimes an unanswered prayer is an answered prayer. It just hasn't been answered the way you want it to be answered. But I would encourage you along this line. Keep on praying. My friend left high school, and when he left high school, he left the church all at the same time. His mother began to pray that her son would return to Jesus. When she was 99 years old, they brought up to the front of the church by where the baptisms were taking place so she could witness her son being baptized and giving his heart to Jesus. She had prayed for that boy for well over 50 years, and she never quit. So just keep praying. God doesn't ever say no, really. I know that's semantics. He always either says yes or he says, I have something better. Now, you might say, what's better than my family member's salvation not ever happening? Okay, you got me there. But keep in mind, God sees the big picture. You pray, and what you're praying is that God's will would be done and that God would do everything he can to effect the answer to your prayer. That's all you can do. You want to turn something over to God and have God work. See, we see the small picture, God sees the big picture. I was driving once from, I was coming into St. Louis, Missouri, and I needed to catch a plane, and I could not remember where to return the car to the rental car place. I couldn't remember. So I got on the phone, and I called my wife, who was not with me at the time. I said, please look at the map, find the airport on the map. I'm coming from the east towards the west, and I need you to tell me where to get off so that I can return the car. And it's wonderful, when you forget something and you've got about 60 seconds to figure it out, and then you make it your spouse's problem. I thought, you're welcome, I said to her, you're welcome. She said, okay, I got you. You want to get up here and go south? I said, no, not south. The airport is on the north side of the freeway in St. Louis. I'm not going south. No, go south. No, I'm not going south. I need to go north. You're sending me in the wrong direction. She said, you are forgetting something. I said, you are forgetting something. The airport is north, and I've got about 20 seconds before this turnoff you're talking about. And she said, no, what you are forgetting is that she had pulled up on the computer. She's looking at the map. She said, you're forgetting that I can see the big picture. Go south. I always do what she says. Anyway. So I went south on, I think, 170, and hello, what do you know? Take the first exit, swung you back around, went north. It went north. You had to go south to get north. Who knew? But I told her I was right. The airport was north. You pray for a raise and you don't get one. You pray for grandpa to get well and he dies. You pray for a relationship to be mended and it doesn't. We see this much. God has the view from heaven. So pray, just pray, hang in there and pray. 18 years isn't long to be praying for something, if you know what I mean. Keep on praying, pray every day. Pray until you can't pray anymore. But do trust God and remember, He's got this. He's got this. Commit it to the Lord and ask God to do what only God can do, and everything's going to be okay. Okay, thanks so much for your questions. I appreciate your questions very much. Take a look at this. Take a look at this video. I think you're going to enjoy this. A couple of minutes, and it'll speak for itself. The question that I'm going to ask you before this is, have you ever wished for something that you don't have? Have you? Take a look at this.
Lost. Yep, that's me. No matter how many successful people are around me, this is what I am.
Look at her. She's outstanding. No matter how many things she goes through, she's amazing.
How did I get here? There's gotta be something more.
She gives, she helps, she volunteers.
I'm useless. I'm helpless. I'm empty. I'm nothing. I'm depressed.
She loves. She's happy. We went to the same school. We both excelled.
What is life if over and over again I just don't want to be here? I do things, but they don't make me any better. But there is one thing that gives meaning in my meaningless life, and that thing that I have is God.
Hey, Lexi, how are you doing?
Hi, Jessica. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just, swinging by, and just want to tell you that you're always so positive and seem very cheerful. I don't know what you have, but I'd like to be more like you.
You do not want to be more like me. You want to be more like God. Do you know her?
Great thought based on Psalm 147, verse 11. I'll be back with this morning's presentation, The United States in Prophecy, after we've been blessed by music from Frank Valdez.
Fear God. We are the people, worship the Lord, and only in Jesus we have our hope. Soon He's coming, we have to proclaim. This is the story, repeat the refrain. Around the world there is only a voice worshiping Jesus. There is no other choice. The King of heaven is coming, proclaim. He's coming quickly. He's coming again. Ago, He say I will come. I just waiting here. He's coming again. The sign of the time announce His here. He's coming soon. He's coming for me. Around the world there is only one voice, worshiping Jesus. There is no other choice. The King of heaven is coming, proclaim. He's coming quickly. He's coming again. And your Father then save. Worship the one. If you worship the beast or take the image in your hands or in your forehead, you will see the wrath of God. With me forever. The angels say, you must worship God. The hour of judgment is coming across. You have to tell, you have to proclaim, Jesus is coming, He's coming again. Around the world there is only a voice, worshiping Jesus. There is no other choice. The King of heaven is coming, proclaim. He's coming quickly. He's coming again. Around the world there is only one voice, worshiping Jesus. There is no other choice. The King of heaven is coming, proclaim. He's coming quickly. He's coming again. He's coming quickly. He's coming again. He's coming quickly. Let all you have in trouble, believe in God, believe in me. I I'm going to prepare a place for you. If I go, I prepare the place. I will come. I will come. I will come again. Amen.
I'm here to speak. I'm here to speak. That's my role today, is just to speak. We asked a poll question a few moments ago. Let's take a look at the poll results. I'm interested to see these. All right. What do you think the strongest quality of the United States is? A, democracy. 16% say democracy. 62% say religious freedom. 9%, just less than 1 in 10, say Judeo-Christian values. And 13% say free enterprise. So about 2/3 say the strongest quality of the United States is religious freedom. You understand this is not a right and wrong question. I don't now intend to comment on that. I just think it's fascinating to see these answers and to get some feedback from you about what you think about various things. I'm very grateful. Well, as we begin this morning's presentation, let's pray and expect the blessing of God. Please bow your head with me. Father in heaven, we're thankful we can be here together today. As we gather around the Bible, we appeal to you that your Spirit would be here present to help us understand what you inspired long ago. We recognize we are merely human. Your thoughts are high above ours. And so we want to approach the Bible with an amount of humility and simply ask that as you lead us, you'll give us grace to follow. When necessary, give us the wisdom to set aside ideas that may have been preconceived. Or as you confirm what you have already taught us, I pray your word would settle deeper into our being. So bless us now, we ask you, for your glory. And we pray in Jesus' name, amen. The United States of America, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. That statement, taken from the Pledge of Allegiance, is taken very seriously. It is valued and respected not only here at home, but also around the world. The Pledge of Allegiance was written the year 1882 by a Christian minister who wanted to instill in young people a love for their country and a love for the principles upon which it was founded. Congress adopted the pledge officially in the year 1942. Early in this nation's history, Europeans traveled to North America and settled in land that had been inhabited by Native Americans. By late in the 18th century, what had become 13 colonies was still subject, or was now subject, to British rule and British taxation, although these colonies had no representation in the British Parliament. So in the year 1776, this nation having a population of around 3 million, the United States was formed and independence from Britain was officially declared. The Declaration of Independence was put together by Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, and on July the 4th in the year 1776, it was unanimously approved by the Continental Congress. The United States had declared themselves to be free. The declaration begins when, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. And then follow some of the most famous words written in the modern history of the world. We hold these truths to be evident, self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty, freedom. When you approach, particularly if you were an immigrant long ago and you approached Ellis Island in New York Harbor, you were approaching hope. When you approached the New York City skyline, you were approaching hope. We go to Ellis Island today, and it's a memorial, and there are many names of immigrants who passed through that place etched there on a memorial at Ellis Island. I've been there with my wife. Her great-grandfather came to this country through Ellis Island. It's an important place, a significant place. This nation has always stood for freedom. The Statue of Liberty there proudly proclaims these famous words. If you can read them there. Give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift up my lamp beside the golden door. There seems to be little doubt that God himself was responsible for the founding of the United States of America. Even our currency bears those important words. It says, "In God we trust." The United States is founded upon principles that were cherished by God himself and has declared to this day that it still stands for those principles. But the question that we're going to ask today, with reference to what it says in the Bible, is, could it be that one day those founding principles might be challenged? Today we go to the Bible and look at prophecies that speak to and speak about the United States of America, and we discover that this nation will occupy a very important and very influential position down here on planet Earth in the close of time. Now, with the United States occupying such a prominent position on the geopolitical landscape, you might expect that the Bible would refer to the United States of America. Now, the Bible doesn't refer to every nation. You don't read in the Bible about Tonga. You don't read in the Bible about El Salvador. You're not going to read specific mention in the Bible of Kazakhstan. You don't find that there. But what you do find are those nations that had a direct impact on God's relationship with his covenant people. In the beginning, we read about not a nation, but a geographical location called the Garden of Eden. Why? That's where God's people were right there in the beginning. The human family began in the Garden of Eden. Creation and the fall. So this is understandable, is it not? Abraham, the father of the faithful, was called from Ur of the Chaldees. And so we read about that. Mesopotamia. It's very important because this is where that great patriarch came from. Then you read about Babylon and Medo-Persia and Greece and Rome. Kingdoms, nations that had a direct impact on God's relationship with his covenant people. The Babylonians ruled the world. They sacked Jerusalem. It was really the capital kingdom, Babylon itself, the capital city of the world. And then Medo-Persia, Greece also. It was a Roman cross upon which Jesus died. These nations still in many ways, these old extinct kingdoms, still today in many ways impact the world in which we live. And so really, it would be surprising if the Bible did not mention the United States of America. The United States really represents an experiment. This was the first time a nation was founded as a republic on the basis or on the principle of religious liberty. And today the United States is the sole world superpower. Here's what was written in one influential newspaper, the Sydney Morning Herald from Sydney, Australia. This is a dozen or so years ago. Americans should admit the truth and face up to their responsibilities as the undisputed masters of the world. The fact is, no country has been as dominant culturally, economically, technologically, and militarily in the history of the world since the Roman Empire. Now, the question of liberty looms large in the Bible. Long ago, God blessed us with freedom of choice. Certainly that was squandered early on. But God believes in liberty, personal liberty. The question is, will these United States still be allowing freedom to ring during Earth's last days? Now, we've already seen in this series of presentations that in the rise and fall of world ruling powers, the first kingdom to come along was Babylon. Babylon was particularly influential because it was Babylon where God's people were taken captive. They were captive down there for a good number of years. Babylon. Medo-Persia was the nation that conquered Babylon and also permitted the reestablishment of Jewish society and the reconstruction of the temple wall, or the city wall, I beg your pardon, and the city of Jerusalem itself. And then Greece came along, Greece under Alexander the Great, and ruled the world for a couple of 100 years. And then Rome. We read about government officials such as Pontius Pilate. He was an official for the Roman government. We read about Caesar. This was a Roman Caesar. It was very much a Roman world when Jesus walked as a man here on the earth. In both Daniel 2 and Daniel chapter 7, we see that the prophecies say that the kingdom of Rome would divide and that out of Rome would come nations. In Daniel 2, we have the feet and the toes. It does not say 10 toes, but I think we can assume 10 toes. And if we couldn't assume 10 toes, in Daniel chapter 7, it specifies 10 horns, 10 nations. Rome would divide into 10 nations. So out of Rome, there came 10 nations. Out of that, there came a little horn about whom we talked last night. Bible commentators believe that this is the same power as the nation in Revelation chapter 13. And really, in the interests of full disclosure, I guess one should be careful saying Bible commentators, because not all Bible commentators see very much in the same way. After those 4 nations and then the 10 nations came this one we read about in Revelation chapter 13, starting in verse 1. The Bible says this. This is John who wrote Revelation, John who wrote the Gospel of John, and 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. He said, I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, on his horns 10 crowns. And we talked about this last night and in previous presentations as well. In Bible prophecy, a beast is a symbol that represents a nation. You might say a kingdom or a nation. When we talk about a beast, this is not an epithet we're throwing around. It's not a curse. It's not an insult. It's a symbol. In much the same way as you would say a bear represents Russia or an eagle represents the United States of America. So this is what John saw. He saw a beast. And then he said the beast that he saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon, one of his heads, as if it had been wounded to death or mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been wounded to death or mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. That's verse 3. Verse 4 says, they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him? You will notice that you have those 4 animals depicted in Daniel chapter 7. When you get over to Revelation 13, you see a composite beast. It's made up of various characteristics of those first 4 nations that were brought into view in Daniel and chapter 7. That's the first nation. We identified what that nation is. Last night we talked about that and we were very clear about that. But then along comes another nation. Here's what we read. Revelation 13 verse 11. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. So the question is, who is the second nation? There's a lot said about the first nation or the first beast in Revelation chapter 13, but here is another one. Who could it be? Well, we see it does not come up out of the sea. Do you remember the prophetic symbol? Sea in Bible prophecy represents people, multitudes of people, but this one came up out of the earth. So relatively speaking, it comes up in a part of the earth that is sparsely populated, relatively speaking. Now, when does it arise? it has to have arisen somewhat recently. Somewhat recently. Because remember the flow of nations. You had Babylon and Medo-Persia and Greece and Rome. The kingdom of Rome came to its end in 476 AD, or the empire. Then those other 10 nations were all set up. The little horn came up after that, and then is brought into view this second nation. So it must come up somewhat recently after or around the time of the arrival of the little horn. Now we have a question. Let's take the question. I'm not sure what this question is. Nicholas C. All right, there were millions of people in what we now call North America at the time of colonization. In many places, the population was greater than Europe at the time. Could the land in Revelation 13 be referring to something else besides population size? Nicholas C. on Facebook. Okay, well, possibly, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that your assertion would stand up that there were as many people living in North America at the time of colonization as there were in Europe. Not sure about that. Perhaps we could look into that and find out what the number was, but the fact remains that it was relatively sparsely populated. Today, the United States has a population of 300 plus million, and there's still plenty of room. So you can be certain that at the time the Pilgrims arrived on the Mayflower, there was plenty of space. And this was, by anybody's definition, sparsely populated. But Nicholas, I appreciate the question very much. Thank you for that. So this nation being depicted in the Bible, we would recognize it as being a new nation. A new nation. Certainly new. We've talked about sparsely populated. Now we're speaking about in terms of time. This would be a new nation. Well, how does it come up? Let's look in Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon. Now that's interesting. Two horns like a lamb. The word lamb is used in the book of Revelation more than 24 times. Every single time it's referring to Jesus, except for this one. But we're told it has two horns like a lamb. This would indicate, I believe, that this nation is somewhat Christ-like, in some way Christ-like. That's important. And you noticed that this nation was not depicted as wearing a crown. Now, if you go back to Revelation 13, the first few verses, that first nation that came up had crowns on its heads. No crowns here. Where there is a crown, you have a what? A king or a queen, you have a monarchy. So there is no monarchy with this second nation in Revelation chapter 13. That's very significant. What we're seeing here is no kingly authority. What we see as we read these verses is that in some way this nation stands for freedom. So here's what we know. Let's build a couple of points together. This nation rises in a part of the world that is sparsely populated. Remember, Nicholas, we're not saying there was no one here, no one at home, but relatively speaking, sparsely populated. It's a young nation. That's what the Bible indicates. It's young. There is no monarchy, and we notice too that it will assume a position of worldwide authority and influence. So as we look at this, we come to the inescapable conclusion that the only nation on the planet that could be represented by this is the United States of America. When it arose, it was known as the New World. A haven, remember what for? For those who were escaping religious persecution. And it was founded on the twin freedoms of government and religion. Freedom of government and freedom of religion. But according to the Bible, and I want to say this with the utmost respect and deference, but according to the Bible, there will be a time when a change comes over the heart of this nation. How do we know that? Revelation chapter 13, verse 11 says, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a what? A dragon. In Revelation, the dragon is none other than Satan himself. Christ-like, but there comes a time when he speaks like a dragon. I think that's fascinating. So how is it that a nation speaks? We both know that a nation speaks through its laws. when you see a nation with draconian laws, it tells you something about what's at the heart of that nation. The Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So here we have a change has come at the heart of this nation, and now it speaks no longer like a lamb, but instead it speaks as a dragon. And now let's look at Revelation 13, verse 12. It says that he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Now you look at that and you say, how in the world could that be? Let's think about this. The Word of God says a second nation would arise, and it would use its power and influence to see to it that the earth would follow after the authority of the first nation, that one that we identified last night. That's significant. According to the Bible, this nation would grow in power and prestige and prominence to the place where it is able to use its authority to place that first nation back in its position of unbridled power. Now we have another question. I think it's a Facebook question, so let's look at this one from Chester G. Why didn't the people use the scriptures to challenge the abuses in the Catholic Church? Okay, this comes to us from last night. How was the church able to fool the people and change the scriptures? Terrific question, Chester. I hope it'll remain there for a moment so I can refer back to it. It's not a matter that the church changed the scriptures. That wasn't the point. What the church did is it kept the scriptures from the people. You see, go back in time, you had a ruling class and an underclass. We're used to society being like this, everybody having free access to everyone. But in those days, there was no Google. People couldn't go to their Bible app. There was none of that. People didn't have access to the Bible. The Bible was written or read or understood in a language that the people didn't understand. When William Tyndale thought to translate the Bible, when John Wycliffe thought to translate the Bible into English, it was a huge idea. People didn't have the Bible in their language before. Luther translated the Bible into German. This was the lights coming on, and this was in the 16th century. I know that's a long time ago, but really relatively recently, if you allow me to put it that way. So how was the church able to fool the people? They didn't change the scriptures. They just kept the scriptures from them. Let me tell you, Chester, there was a time that if you were found to have the Bible in your possession or a part of the Bible, you'd be put to death. So maybe that answers your question. Now let's come back to the first part. Why didn't the people use the scriptures to challenge the abuses in the church of the day? Quite simply because they didn't have them. And when Martin Luther found a Bible and started reading the Bible, then he was able to use the scriptures to challenge the church's abuses. So they didn't because they couldn't, but when they could, they did. A timely question. I appreciate it. It's a really good question. Thank you very much. Now let's try to understand how this might happen. How a nation that stands for freedom might one day use its power to affect freedom in a negative way. With freedom, there comes responsibility. God gave us freedom of choice, and with that freedom of choice came great responsibility. So, in this country today, I think I've mentioned this already in a previous night, you're free to learn how to fly a plane, but we trust that you won't fly it into a building. You're free to drive a car, but we trust that with that you'll accept the responsibility to drive safely, not imperil lives and jeopardize people's safety, you see. With freedom, there comes responsibility. With freedom, there's a risk involved. There's a risk that someone who has freedom might use that freedom in a negative way. The United States was once the haven for those who wanted to worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience. However, today's society has shifted. There is a great deal less respect for God and for biblical principles. What was once taboo is now celebrated. Today, it's true of the entire Western world that essentially anything goes. And some of the grossest sins imaginable are protected by what people misguidedly refer to as freedom of expression. And we don't even react anymore to things that not long ago would have seemed absolutely scandalous. This nation is coming under attack. We know that. We were shocked on 9/11. I've talked about the moral attack, but now I mean the literal attack. You know, if you go back a generation, the idea that before you get on the plane, somebody is going to have you stand like this in a scanner and take a photograph of you that you hope doesn't wind up in a newspaper. A generation ago, we would have said, oh, no, you don't. But you see, the sand has shifted beneath our feet. And now our response is, man, if this is going to keep me safe, you can take all the photographs you want. I can't carry a drink through security. That's fine. I don't want the terrorists doing that. I can't wear my shoes when I walk through security. Well, after all, some guy did try to stick a bomb in his shoe, so it stands to reason you want me to take my shoes off. We are at a place now where the rules of engagement have changed altogether. And nobody believes it's going to get any better. Many years ago, we were walking through an airport together, and my son, who was much younger, said, Dad, do you think there'll ever come a day when we won't have security like this anymore? Of course, the answer is yes. We'll have more security. It won't be like this. It'll be more intrusive, more effective. We're not going backwards. We're going forwards, or maybe in some senses, forwards is backwards. And so we understand now that nations have got to do what they've got to do. Now, I don't mean to get political here, so I hope you won't mind me sharing this while I'm thinking on my feet. There's something called the Patriot Act. Now, again, I don't mean to get political. I'm not for or against in this context. But in the Patriot Act, there are, what's that word I'm looking for? There are, I still can't think of the word I'm looking for, and that's really quite a pity. Allowances made for certain things that we wouldn't have thought necessary long ago. When we find out that the government is intercepting emails and reading emails, we say, what? We wouldn't have done that a generation ago. Well, it wasn't email, but we wouldn't have done that then. But we say, this must be in order to protect our freedom. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not criticizing government policies, just pointing something out. We wouldn't have done it a generation ago, but we didn't need to. And that's because crazy people with bombs weren't threatening to blow us off the face of the map. Today they are. So as things change, society reacts. And one of the things societies do is they begin to restrict freedom for the benefit of all. Many people see that the only solution for this nation, even for this planet, is to return to the principles of the one who made us great in the first place. The Bible says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. When a nation is down, when an individual is down, the best thing that nation, that individual can do is return to God, to return to Christ, and embrace God's principles. So it is likely, as we look at the Bible, that what is about to happen is that a nation will attempt to turn to God, but in so doing will actually be turning away from God. I'd like to invite a friend of mine to come forward. His name is Dr. Dennis Pettibone, a retired professor of history. So Dr. Pettibone is going to come forward, and I will ask him some questions here about the United States in history, how we got our start as a nation, how some changes have taken place down through time, and what might be some of the threats that we're facing. Dr. Pettibone, I'm going to welcome you. Thank you for joining me today. Talk with me just for a moment about how the United States came to be. I covered this in very general terms earlier, but what was the milieu out of which this nation arose?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the first colony that survived, Virginia, started out as a capitalist enterprise, a joint stock company. The Spanish had been hauling in gold and silver from the Americas, and they thought they could be able to do that too. It didn't work. But why were people willing to come to these colonies? A lot of it was economic. In England, a handful of families, relatively speaking, owned all the land. And they were beginning to discover that they could make more money raising sheep than fooling with tenants. And they began to expel the tenants. And they had nowhere to go. So America seemed beckoning, and there was a lot of land available here. So that's one of the reasons people came. Now, in the New England colonies and also in Pennsylvania and Maryland, the issue of religious freedom was a major draw. In England, you had the official Church of England, and they didn't like people with different ideas. And there was a group of Protestants in England that were called Puritans because they wanted to purify the Church of England, because they thought there were too many remnants of Catholicism and even paganism in the Church of England, and they wanted to purify the Church of England. And there were some who wanted to go even farther than that and separate themselves from the church. And the people that we usually call the Pilgrim Fathers were among these people who wanted to separate from the church. And all of the Puritans, whether they were separatist or not, were persecuted in England, especially under Archbishop Laud, who did what he could to try to exterminate Puritans and get rid of Puritan ministers. And so you have the Mayflower and the separatist or pilgrims settling in part of what is now Massachusetts, but the biggest part of Massachusetts was the regular Puritans, who were also being persecuted. And most of New England was settled primarily by Puritans who were believing that the Church of England was too worldly. But they didn't always respect other people's rights.
No, that's right. There was those folks who sought religious freedom weren't always willing to extend that to others. Let me ask you this question. So that the nation got off to its start, I think it's important for us to remember that this wasn't always a great world-ruling nation. This is really, when I say world-ruling, world-influencing nation, this is really a somewhat recent development. Let's go back in time. Our time is limited. We go back to the 3rd century AD. I expect if I was living in Italy in the 3rd century AD, I would say there is no way the Roman Empire could ever collapse. And it did. Great empires have. Are we able to assume that this nation will always be a great and powerful nation, or are there threats to this nation? Briefly, what are they?
Well, there are several scenarios that could weaken the influence of the United States. Some people are positing that China is going to overtake us as an economic power. We also, when we look at some of the Native American groups, for example, sometimes environmental issues destroyed the nations. One could easily imagine what would happen if California's drought continued and if it spread.
Mm-hmm.
So there are challenges that could be. Somebody could attack us. That's a possibility. But I think the biggest threat, you kind of referred to a little bit, is that we became more authoritarian and that we would lose our character as a freedom-loving nation.
And you believe that's a possibility?
I think that's a possibility. It's happened a lot of other places.
Yeah, it has. Dr. Pettibone, thanks for taking some time today. You keep the mic, I'll shake your hand. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Dr. Dennis Pettibone. As we look in the Bible, what we see is a scenario developing where there's a move to lead people to return to God's ways. But in so doing, the pendulum swings and folks are influenced away from God instead. A good deception always closely mirrors the genuine article. And people in the end of time are going to be encouraged to receive the mark of the beast, thinking that that is going to be a good thing when absolutely it's not. The Bible says this nation, the United States, will use its power to elevate the first nation of Revelation chapter 13 back to its position of global supremacy. And that's pretty sobering thought. So as we consider that, here's what we find. We find that the Bible says in the book of Revelation that ultimately an act of worship is going to be enforced. What act of worship will that be? We read in Revelation chapter 13 that he causes all, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one can buy and sell or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now notice that it says he causes. That means forces or coerces people on this earth to receive the mark of the beast. According to the Bible, laws will be passed. That's how a nation causes or forces or coerces. Laws will be passed legislating an unbiblical act of worship. Now, I understand we have another Facebook question. Let's take that really quickly. From Melissa W. Do you believe God steps in our lives and changes our destiny, or our life's occurrence is a product of karma or natural consequences? Melissa, God has a purpose for you. He wants you to be saved and spend eternity with Him. Along the way through life, a number of things happen to move us out of God's pathway. That's not God's doing, it's ours or circumstance. God will then intervene to move us back and move us back. God is always calling, He's always drawing, He's always doing what He can. So God is guiding, and then when we use our will in a way that bucks against God's plan, He is faithful, He is patient, and He continues to guide and draw us. Now, in that verse we just read, it said that people who didn't receive the mark of the beast will not be able to buy and sell. So let's understand what that is. For a long time, people have been worrying that the mark of the beast is something that's going to be implanted on them. It'll be a silicone chip, a smart card. It will be something under the skin, something so that you can be controlled from buying and selling. Now, let's try to separate a couple of things here. One is how the mark of the beast is going to be enforced. That's one. The other is what the mark of the beast is. We talk about that tonight. Whatever the mark of the beast is, it's pushed upon the whole world. There will be many who don't want to receive the mark of the beast. And so the Bible says they will be coerced to accept it. And if you don't accept it, then you will not be able to buy and sell. What will the mechanism be that keeps people from buying and selling? We don't know. We are not told. But whatever it is, it isn't the mark of the beast. I want to draw this very clear distinction. Let's place the mark of the beast right here on the stand. There it is, right there. You don't want to take it. What is going to be done in order to coerce you to take that mark of the beast? Somewhere along the line, you will be prevented from buying and selling. Now, when the lights go out and the heat is not working in the wintertime and you can't put food on your table, those economic sanctions against you are going to be a powerful motivator to move you to accept the mark of the beast. The economic sanctions themselves are not the mark of the beast. They're a mechanism to to move you to receive the mark of the beast. So this idea that we must fear something put under our skin or a laser beam or a whatever it is, no, those things aren't the mark. See, what Satan has been successful in doing is moving our eyes away from where our eyes need to be. Our eyes are on Christ, at least that's where they should be. If we follow Jesus, we have confidence now and through anything that comes. The mark of the beast comes and you will say, I will follow Jesus. This might not be easy, but I will trust in Jesus. Instead, people's focus has been moved away from Christ and onto all manner of unbiblical things, and that's a great pity. Today, we hardly see money anymore. Your paycheck is direct deposited into your bank account. Nothing wrong with that. Even today now, people more and more, instead of pulling out their credit card, are pulling out their smartphone and paying that way. We're moving more and more in an electronic direction. So can we imagine a time coming where people will be prevented from buying and selling? Come on, man, we're almost there. In fact, we are there. If the manager at your bank wanted to, she could prevent you from buying and selling right now by freezing your bank accounts. Your cards don't work. All you've got is the money in the piggy bank. Ladies and gentlemen, stop fretting about silicone chips and little things that get put under your skin. The future has already arrived. We are at that place already where this prevention or this prohibition could already be enforced. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that cards or chips or this or that are going to be used to prevent us from buying and selling, but we all know that they could. We don't know, and there's no need to speculate. People have speculated far too much. There are some things we know and some things that we don't. But what we know is that we are living in a time where already buying and selling could be curtailed and controlled. Any new technological developments just make it easier for that to be. But hear me carefully. Whatever the mechanism is, isn't the mark of the beast. It is a mechanism to move you to receive the mark of the beast. It's an old practice. Economic sanctions until recently were in place against Cuba, against Iran, during apartheid, against South Africa, other nations as well. This is new. During World War II, many people still remember rationing. You couldn't just go and buy whatever you wanted to buy. There were controls in place. So this isn't as hard to affect as you might imagine. The Bible is clear. We see the world is declining rapidly, morally, spiritually, and socially. It's not safe anymore. We can all agree that a return to God's principles is in the best interests of the world, no question. The challenge that we're facing is this: who's deciding what is God's principles? And when you have a beast power, in Revelation chapter 13, the early verses, who has its own ideas of what represents the will of God, we're going to find ourselves in a place where somebody with an inaccurate view of the will of God will enforce upon the world something said to be good, but that which will ultimately prove to be against the will of God and will bring spiritual disaster. The time is coming when the might of the planet's most powerful nation will be misused to enforce this mark. Yet most people will think it's a blessing from God. Now, come on, would a nation really go that far to force people to do things that they don't want to do? Well, it goes further. Revelation 13, verse 15 says, he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. The Bible says that people without the mark of the beast will be threatened with death. Can you imagine somebody being so religiously fanatical that it would threaten to kill those who don't agree with them? It's happened all the way down through history. In unfortunate parts of the world, it's happening right now. A subtle question, a good counterfeit runs closely to the true. An image to the beast will be formed. What is the beast? It is an amalgamation of church and state. An image to it will be formed. Worship will be the main issue. You will go with the program, or persecution will come. You will be singled out for special treatment. God's people will have a question to answer. Will you worship God in spirit or in truth? Or will you instead worship according to the traditions of man? Now, we've seen this in the Bible before. There were 3 young men in a crowd one day, a crowd out on the plain of Dura in what is modern-day Iraq. The king of Babylon was told that he represented the head of gold in the statue that he dreamed about. But he didn't like that. He had the entire statue made out of gold. And to inaugurate it, he called people together to worship that statue. He said, when the band starts to play, I want you to bow down and worship that statue. The band started to play. The crowd bowed down, except for 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Where was Daniel? He wasn't there that day. My guess is the king knew he wouldn't bow down, so he got him out of town. But he was willing to bet that everybody else would. The crowd bowed. These 3 did not. Wait, what's going on there? Somebody came to the king and said, these 3 Hebrew slaves are not bowing down. He called them over. What? You're not what? And they said, oh, king, we are not careful to answer you in this matter. We want you to know that our God is able to save you out of your fiery furnace. He'd threatened them with death. But even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down and worship you. You see, they had made a decision for God up here. And so the Holy Spirit locked their knee joints down there. And they would not bow down. Their minds were given to God, and they were going to be faithful to God. The king was apoplectic and had them thrown into a burning fiery furnace. And as he looked at what he thought was the waste of 3 good young men, he was surprised to discover there were not 3 in the fire, but instead there were 4. He said the 4th looks like a son of the gods. In other words, the Son of God. It was the Son of God. Jesus was in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were protected. They were spared. They were unharmed. Not even their hair was singed by violently burning flames. Friend of God, we have a privilege down here in the close of time to stand for God, to stand. It's a privilege, a blessing. And we wonder sometimes, oh, can I do this? Will I be strong enough? Am I holy enough? We're asking the wrong questions. The questions are not, am I able? The question is he able? 3 young boys went into a fire, and he was able. Daniel went into a lion's den, and he was able. The Hebrews were exiting Egypt, and they were heading towards the promised land. There was an ocean in the way, the Red Sea, but he was able. They wandered in the wilderness. They had nothing to eat. Manna on the ground. Water came from a rock for them to drink because he was able. The blind cried out. The lame called his name. They couldn't see. They couldn't walk, but he was able, and Jesus is able today. The only thing he cannot do is force your will. We are coming up to a time of great crisis, a time of spiritual crisis in this world. The question is worship. Who will have your heart? Who will have your allegiance? Who will have your love? Who will you give it all to? You can trust Jesus with your heart and your life today. If he has all of you, you ought to rejoice. If he doesn't, you ought to make a decision. He's looking for you, your heart, your life, your mind, your will. And he will keep you now, and he will keep you forever. Why? Because of your goodness? No, because of his. Because he is able. He is able today. My friend Frank is going to come forward and sing again. You'll be blessed again. And as he sings, I want you to remember that God is able. God is good. God is all powerful. Christ Jesus died for you, rose for you, ascended for you. And one day soon, he's coming back to this earth in power and glory for you.
I lay to sleeping and came softly. I stood in old Jerusalem beside the temple there. I hear the children singing, and never are they sad. Behold, the voice of angel from heaven it answered. Before my voice of angel from heaven in answer Jerusalem, lift us your gaze and sing, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to your King. And then me saw my twin was shamed, the street no longer run. Hush where the glass of Sada, the little children saw. The sun was dark with mystery, the moon was cold and chill. As a powerhouse across a rose upon a lonely hill, as a child across a rose upon a lonely hill. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, lift up your head and sing, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to your King. The street my name to be. I saw the holy city beside the tireless sea. The light of God was on the street, the gates were open wide. I would might enter, and no was denied. the moon, O star by night, O sun that shine by day. It was the new Jerusalem that would not pass away. It was the new Jerusalem that would not pass away. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, lift up your head and sing, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to your King. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to your King, your King, your King.
We're going to pray together. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful we have so much to look forward to. Oh, we study here today about something that's serious. Well, it's all serious. But things that are coming on this earth that are going to bring and represent trouble for your children. There's nothing new in that. But thank you that we can look beyond that to the time when the new Jerusalem comes back down from God out of heaven to this earth. And we want that day to come soon. Lord, keep us until then. Save us in spite of ourselves. Thank you that we have a place with you for all eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, before you go, if you're online and you want today's study material, you want to tell us that you want us to send you within the United States study number 20. Thanks for being here. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.